Now I'm still flipping battery chargers every morning. Everything looks okay now. You would think spring was here after yesterday, and I thought, wow, you gotta get up this morning, it's 40 degrees again. Oh, it's cold. But I want to show the little repair. I didn't show it on video yesterday. I spent time after we were done with the video and everything. I came back out to the garage. I did a little repair on the RD. Maybe something that'll be of interest. Now remember what really happened. I made this piece as a makeshift thing when I did the exhaust change. I made it out of 1/4 inch threaded rod. Threaded rod is extremely soft, and where the threads are cut into it, or usually on threaded rod they're rolled in, they're not cut. And what happens, it creates stress risers wherever the low point of the thread is, and that part snapped right off. But I wanted to show something here. I wound up with a hardened bolt. I found a hardened bolt, but it wasn't long enough. So what I did, I JB welded on a piece of aluminum tubing that I had. It looks like it's going to work perfect. I want to sand it down a little bit so the paint sticks. I want to give it a coat of black paint, and then I want to make a little rubber, some kind of a little rubber bushing, so it's not rubbing right on there. And again, this is Luciano's favorite material, JB Weld. Boy, if they stop making JB Weld, we can't ride motorcycles. So I looked through my rubber grommet thing, and I don't know if any of these are going to fit, that I can make a little rubber piece. I just don't want to have the two pieces of metal rubbing on each other. And it's a small item, and I do want to paint it, of course. But because it looks like it may get warmer this afternoon, but it's really cold right now. What I found out, it's almost impossible to just go buy a kickstand, of course. It's a 43-year-old bike. But I think somewhere down the road we may get one. And if we do, obviously, that'll be a better choice than this. But in the meantime, having that thicker rod and having it case-hardened material, and I painted it so it's covered with JB Weld. The last thing I want to have is for that to break. And when that broke, you know, that's just one of the things. Any makeshift part I make, I always want to test it, and I want to have a couple of rides on it before I feel confident about it. So I count our little Evil Twin project as one of the more successful ones. And usually if there's only one or two little things have to be done now, when the weather does warm up, 70s and 80s, I think we'll drop the main jet down one and maybe drop the needle down one. But for the cool weather now, actually it wasn't bad at all. I thought it may be, because when I put those tune pipes on, I had spent a lot of time. I probably have 20 main jets for this bike and pilot jets and whatever. But I even have an extra set of carburetors. But I know from the past, once you get it really close, sometimes you fiddle with it and it doesn't get a lot better because it warms up or it gets colder. And typically when you'd be racing two strokes, sometime in the afternoon when it warmed up, you'd wind up changing the main jet. So, and again, if you get it too lean, it's hole in a piston time. Okay guys, I know it's time to eat. I didn't forget you. I do never forget to feed the fish or the birds. You know, it's funny, as the temperature drops back down into the 40s, and maybe even a little lower, the fish lose their appetite. Oh, and it's not even 40 degrees out there, is it, Kara? It's cold out there, and the wind is blowing.
Yeah, you didn't even look today.
It's cold. So as I'm having coffee, you can imagine Karen's doing her veggie thing, trying to keep Grandpa Windy alive for a couple more years. And people think I'm a vegan. I'm not really a vegan. But I'm eating a lot of vegetables too. Well, we still got 3 tires to change. We still have quite a bit of stuff to get ready for summer, but today it's just too cold out there to even think about tires. So it turned out to be a beautiful day, but it's just cold and the wind is howling, and that usually means we'll do some work in the garden today. Listen to those birds chirping. Now I expect I planted my zinnia seeds too early. I do have other seeds, of course. But I was just hoping, we had those couple of nice warm days, and I guess I just got carried away thinking every day is going to be warm. I'm not much of a farmer, that's for sure. But one thing is for sure, every day here, I guess maybe every day for you, is an unpredictable adventure. I want to work on that kickstand today. And then I definitely definitely want to make it bulletproof. And I kind of thought when I had, because the only thing I had that was long enough was that 1/4-inch threaded rod. And that rod is made out of really soft steel. Now that didn't cut it, but I have a 3/8 hardened bolt. Alright, that should be a whole different ball game. And this is one of the things, these nail files, and Scott had sent some down here, and I appreciate them, but in the meantime I've gotten some from Karen too, and these are just handy. I want to scuff this up just enough so the paint sticks to it. Not looking to make a fancy kickstand, but at least if we have this scuffed up, the paint will stick. Hopefully. Boy, that word hopefully. Anyway, I think that's a whole lot stronger than the 1/4-inch 20 rod. Always remember that threaded rod, unless it's been heat treated, if they use the mildest of steel because they roll those threads on. Now this is a kind of stuff you can't really make up. In the last couple days we tested these, and look, this is the perfect opportunity. We had an opportunity to check these little buffers. We had a chance to check these and show what we thought. And now today I have, I gotta find a bag of mandrels. There is a bag of mandrels in here somewhere. There they are. So again, I'm going to try to, this will be a perfect use for this Dremel tool. Now I just really love when you have a new tool, and within a couple of days we found several uses for it. In fact, I have a couple of ideas here today because it looks like a hurricane is going through here. But anyway, we want to see how these are going to work. So actually that shaped up pretty decently, and that Dremel tool, we're going to find uses. In fact, I'm thinking, because it looks like we got a hurricane going through here today, I'm going to try to use some of those buffing things on some of the areas of this that maybe need a little touch up, and we'll try to show that we have had a really good luck with that little Dremel tool. And while that's drying up, I want to find what I'm going to do about having a little rubber bushing between it and this, so when it goes up, it just doesn't rub metal to metal. It must be my lucky day. I had the exact rubber bushing in my collection of junk, and when that goes up, that'll just protect it from scratching up the chrome or whatever. That truly was my lucky day. And that rubber bushing worked out perfect, so that's one small step for mankind and one big step for J.B. Weld. So I just had another cup of coffee and I took a little break, talked to Karen. We looked up the weather today. There's supposed to be a windstorm coming through here. 40-mile-an-hour winds. I don't know what the hell that's all about. But what I wanted to do is, I was thinking I'd get a test ride today. I'm definitely bailing out of that. See, the point is I spent so much time with this. This is a 500-hour restoration. And I want to go out on a day that I've postponed it when I didn't feel good, I was sick, and I've postponed it on days I thought it would rain. And I'm going to postpone it today. I thought this would be an afternoon ride. Sorry, Charlie. So here's the point on our RD. We've done a lot of polishing on it, and there's a lot of spots. They're not impossible to get to, they're just difficult. And I think our little Dremel tool, I'm going to try a couple of things here. I have time before we're done for the day. I wanted to try just polishing up. I'll just give you a good example. When you go to polish this, getting in here, you've got to do by hand. Now I've got those little polishing wheels that you can't get an electric drill in there. I think the edges of the fins you can do some on. And certainly down in here you can get, there's certainly some spots. So even though this engine is, just rough polished, anytime I can detail it out, I'm always happy about that. Now what usually happens, I spent $30 or $40 on these bits and polishers and little wheels. And I think some of these little wheels and some of these buffers, of course, I made a whole a dedicated video to these not long ago, a couple days ago. But now I'm going to get to try some of them in the real world. So what I did, just did a little practice on this one of these little buffing pads. And by the way, I want to show this. So I tried this with no compound, because sometimes that does a good job of polishing too. I put a little bit of Mother's aluminum mag polish on the aluminum, not on the pad, on the aluminum. Otherwise it just sprays all over. A very minimum amount. It seems to do a pretty good job. And it lets you get in places you really can't get in unless you have these little tiny octopus fingers. This is really a handy thing, and I found it really works best on this Dremel at speed 2 and 3, low speed, not high speed. It really does a nice polishing job. And this is always one of the areas you can never get in there unless you have these long little skinny fingers. So this little tool, it makes it a lot easier. And it just takes patience and time. Now I am really impressed with one thing. If you experiment a little bit with the speed, I think you can get this to really do a nice job. Now, you could never get in there with a big buffing wheel or anything, but boy, this is going to be going to make polishing engine parts a whole lot more fun and easy. And the nice thing is, once you do this, you only have to do it really once. Then to touch it up, you just touch this with some compound, and you only really have to do the hard work once. The rest of it's a piece of cake. It doesn't take long. What's amazing is how quick. That'll just go right through. Now that part had never been polished. These parts, of course, have been polished. But even a small little detail like that, every little detail on a polished engine just makes it look so much nicer. One of the little details on an RD is this polishes up beautifully. I'm not sure that's going to win any bike shows or anything, but I just like having things. Now, when I was riding this yesterday, I just felt like I touched it and it was clean, it was neat. And yesterday, and I forgot to put this on the video, I bumped into a fella that had an RD. And he stopped and he said, "Oh, I had one of those. I had one of them. Oh, yeah, I used to." And we chatted for 10, 15 minutes. But it reminded me how important it is to preserve these older bikes. Because once they're gone, and of course, the first thing he asked me is, "Do you want to sell it?" Yeah. So I gave him the number of the channel. I hope he's watching this right now, in fact. But anyway, I did forget to put that on a video yesterday. We had so many things to do yesterday. We were gardening and everything. But this turned out to be a surprising, nice little thing. Now, I want to try some of the other buffing little wheels. I know you can use those little wire things to do the edge of the... What you do is you do the edge of the fin with the wire first and then the buffing wheel. And what happens is you catch just this top edge and put a radius on it. And that's what lets the sun reflect. You don't need to do the bottom edge. You just get that top edge radius, and it looks so much nicer. So the next test is I want to run one of these little buffing balls, and this is so nice having these, that we have a lot of them anyway. And I'll run it on speed 3 or speed. I've been even trying speed 4, but I know if you go all the way up, and it serves no purpose. Anyway, these seem to work better at the lower speeds. So the way I found seems to work the best is to just take a little bit of this mother's polish, and I'll bet 8065 will work exactly the same probably. Put a little bit on. Now with a big buffing wheel, you never can get down into these grooves, and so your polishing job just isn't as good as it possibly could be. So with this in mind, and again, I think these were a real find. They really are something I'm excited about adding to my tool inventory, and I hope these, if you decide to get them, you have just as good a luck as I have. But just have patience. See, because this is something I enjoy. I like having a clean, polished motorcycle. If you don't, if you like having the opposite, the patina look or something, well, there's no point watching a video. But this is just things that entertain me. Now, I don't know if you can see the difference that these put on. They really do put I call it a nice shine. It's a nice smooth shine. Again, I think when you go to the faster speeds, what happens, you burn and you don't really get the same polish that you get well, this is speed 4 right now. But I think you can see that these they get in all the little nooks and crannies too. And that's what makes this, to me, it's a valuable thing, because anybody can polish this flat surface. It's getting in these nooks and crannies that takes forever with, especially if you buff it by hand. It'll take, you'll be as old as I am before you get it polished. Not really, nobody's as old as I am. Anyway, this coronavirus that's killing us, this keeping busy like this, I'm not sure if I was able to ride every day for the last month. I would have been riding, but I've tried to make use of the time doing these little projects. And I've tried to share what I've learned, and I think I've learned a few things. This is one of them that I think you can literally put in the bank. When you see how this works, I think you'll be very happy. You'll be impressed. Now, it's always good to remember at the end of any time you use a little buffing wheel or anything, because what happens is when you've used any kind of polish, buffing wheel, whatever, any of these polishes, you've exposed raw aluminum. Now you have to protect it. Now the choices would be Flitz is my choice, and there's several other choices. Carnauba wax, McGuire's makes good stuff, but it's basically there for the protection, so that what's going to happen is I don't want to have, a couple of months from now that this gets really dull. I want to keep it nice and shiny. And that protective stuff like Flitz, it really works well. I know Carnauba wax, of course, works well. But, boy, these little Dremel tools, they have given me some thoughts on polishing that I was not really aware of before, or that probably were a lot more difficult. I'll find a lot more things to polish now. And of course, all of this is all in the eye of the beholder. But having a restored 43-year-old bike that isn't all full of oil and rust and grit, it really, now, see, this is the thing. A big flat part like that, you don't need these little Dremel tools. But a little thing like this, the fuel petcock, or to get in all these little areas. Oh man, it's just, this makes it so much easier that it's going to inspire me to try to find some more stuff to polish. And when you take this bike out in the sun, or you're on a ride and it's all perfectly clean like that, I just think that's what works for me. Maybe it works for you too. And if it doesn't, we could still be friends. Now, I'm pretty much done with one side of the engine. I think that was time well spent. Now this side of the engine has an awful lot of little nooks and crannies that are hard to get into, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a coffee break, because when we come out here, get back out here, I'll probably have another hour or so. I can detail out this side of the engine. And on a hurricane day, I feel like we got something accomplished. Now, Karen and I have been walking every afternoon for about an hour through town, but I'm not sure she's going to want to walk today. We're going to get blown away. But boy, look at the blue sky. Everything's nice, except we got 40-mile-an-hour gusts coming through here. And pretty soon we're going to have wisteria right out over the pond. And even now as the compound is drying, the coffee just tastes better and better. So here's all my veggies all cooked up. Wow. What? I'm going to turn into a banana or a vegetable or something. Look, you never have enough. There's never enough vegetables in my diet. Now what I wanted to see is if this is going to do a job on the edges of the fins, and I don't know if it is. Needless to say, we have other pads that do work well. Yeah, actually the fins are something you could use the bigger buffer on, but I just want to see if this is going to do the same job. And the trick is to get the top edge, that top corner, nice and smooth. When that's smooth, that's where it reflects the light. Yeah, it actually looks like it does a good job. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure you can see that, but it does add a nice touch. Now, if you really want to make this really nice, you take some 2000 grit paper on a sanding block. It's just this top corner, not the flat, the top corner, because you're going to be seeing this from 6 feet up. You can just kiss that with some 2000 grit, and I may do that in the future just to because I got to use up time here during the virus. But that's a nice little touch. Just for some people who may not realize, a lot of engine parts on this era bike, they came with a clear epoxy coating that there's no way you can get it off with paint remover. And I have found the only way I've ever gotten off is mechanically removing it with light grade sandpaper and then repolishing. That all of these parts, whether they're painted or they have that clear coating on them, it is a monster job to get that old stuff off. Now the RD didn't. This RD did not have that on when I bought it. Another thing, when I bought this frame, if I had this little tool now, if you could imagine how many hours my little fingers got in all these little grooves and angles, and that frame, oh boy. Luciano used to come out to the garage and see me out there on freezing cold days and say, "Oh, you're crazy, just leave it that way." No, I didn't want to have a flat black frame. Can you imagine this bike with a flat black frame? Ugh. Now the last step on everything, before I would spend all this time polishing, got good old-fashioned flitz, give everything a quick coat of flitz. It only takes a couple of seconds. Doesn't quicker than putting on a coat of carnauba wax, and hopefully this will do a good job of protecting it, especially if we wind up riding in some crappy roads, a rainy day. There's a lot of things that the flitz is a good protection. And it's not that long. It doesn't take that long to do it. It's a matter of a minute or two. And I just think it would be crazy to put all this time and effort into getting it polished and cleaned and then say, oh, just let it go. Because aluminum wants to oxidize just like every other metal. It wants to oxidize very, very quickly. And if you've ever taken a gas tank, sanded the paint off and gone and had a cup of coffee, you come back, it's rusty. Well, that oxidation starts immediately. And the flitz, well, I don't know why. I'm a big believer in it, but I am. And I always say, the results speak for themselves. You can talk the talk, but then you've got to, I want to see the product. I want to stand back and look at the bike and decide for yourself. And we're all flitzed up, and hopefully we're going to get a summer's worth of protection out of that. Now, one final thing I wanted to do before we quit for the day here. And this is a worn out one of those little buffing balls, so I just wanted to see how this is going to work as I'm going to use it in the future for doing this kind of a thing, cleaning up the back wheel. So there's so many little angles and edges on these wheels, and it looks like, yeah, this will be useful. It'll be useful. Now these wheels were never buffed out, so what would happen is if I want to do an upgrade, and maybe I will do it while we're in the middle of this coronavirus and I'm trying just to stay busy, what I think will be a good thing is I could take some 2000 grit paper. In fact, I'm sure I can. And then buff them out with this little buffing tool and turn it around. Boy, this thing lets you get in a lot of angles and edges and great little spots. Now, Yeah, you could do this by hand, but boy, as I know, and of course I've done a lot of wheels by hand, it is a labor of love. This would be a really nice thing just to do it. I'm excited about maybe, see what it is, I add a tool to my arsenal. And then I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it yet. But as I'm out here and I'm spending time in the shop and in the garage, I'm looking for things I possibly can use this for in the future. And doing these wheels, and luckily I do have 2 sets of these wheels, so one of the thoughts was we'll make a set of, in the future, another set, a whole new set of wheels. And then I could have these to take down and sand and buff. But you know what? The thing that always happens in this part of the country, winter is coming. Yeah, that looks like it cleaned up real nice. I'm not sure you can see it, but it definitely was better than even a small amount of buffing. It's amazing. I always think the first little amount of buffing does 90% of the work, and then it's 90% of the time to get all the little details done. But this was a day well spent. And this is what's very, very handy about having it. This is a real luxury, having a center stand on a bike for cleaning the back wheel, for everything. Just a nice, I wish I could have had that center stand on with the other pipes. I may have to figure out if I put the other pipes back on how I can do that. Now, if you're a young guy, and I don't mean this as a put down, but if you're a young guy, you probably don't remember, even if you've lived in the era of the GS Suzukis and all of these modern bikes, and they are wonderful, wonderful machines. But you might not remember, there was a time when none of the bikes had an electric starter, none. And I remember a great story. This is, I think, a priceless story. I had a friend that lived right next door to my house that had a 900 Sportster. And he had just gotten it. Of course, it had no electric starter. And he would be kicking this thing on a cold day, because we rode right through the winter. He'd be kicking and kicking and kicking. And he finally got it running. And it was a cool bike. Actually, I painted it for him, in fact. I may even have some pictures of that. That was John McKendrow's bike. But anyway, this is the story. We used to go hang out with his friends who all had Sportsters. And I'd pull in on this bike. Actually, a bike just like it, a 350. And they'd look at the bike, Jap crap, rice burner, this, that, and the other thing. And I'd say, well, you know what? We could settle this right now for a couple $100. And I'd take out some money and would make a bet whose bike was the fastest. And of course, once we established the bet and where we're going to race, I said, only one thing. You have to hand start the bike. You can't kick it. And then that changed everything. And then we do this little magic trick. I got to show you this. This is so funny. Brings back good memories. And you can imagine how annoying it is if somebody had a brand new Sportster and you said, okay, you just got to do this. Oh, and it doesn't start. Maybe we ought to put the choke on. Now, we definitely made the right move today, not going out for a ride, because that wind is howling. I don't even know if Karen's going to want to walk today, but if she doesn't, do the treadmill. Anyway, there's some ideas for polishing up parts on your bike. We're going to do the GS when it's his turn in the rotation. We have bikes to test ride. I got parts to polish. Luckily, Karen and I are both feeling a little bit better. Not perfect, but a little bit better. And I hope you and your family are weathering this storm. And years from now, I laugh when you look back at this video in 2024 or something, because I see some of the videos that I have out on YouTube, they're already 10 years old or 7 years old or whatever. I don't know, maybe I'm not going to outlive these videos, that's for sure. But anyway, there is some good information. We do enjoy that little tool and those little bits. Run them at the low speed. And there's a lot of little detailing you can do. I think it's a good investment. All of those things, and we have a kickstand and a center stand now. And and a nice little rubber bushing that just worked out perfectly. So sometime it is your lucky day. I always say today is always my lucky day. Or the alternative is not that really that good. But anyway, and we, as I always say, 43-year-old bike, 74-year-old guy, Mamma mia, what's not to like? And we have, once this virus goes away, we have, I hope, some really good rides. And I hope we can get together with the A-team again. That's my dream come true, would be to get us all back together at Choppers and be doing everything we do, and back in my backyard and down the cellar and at Glenn's and at Vince's, and wonderful memories, wonderful. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed the video, and just go start that Harley Sportster by hand. Or Tim's Norton. I bet that's a bitch to start by hand. Or a Vincent. Holy crow. Anyway, that is a fun trick, and we used to put, you can actually start an H2 that way too. We used to start all the two strokes. That just, boom, then they go. But, of course, it's a trick. Anyway, hope you did enjoy the video, and don't go starting that Sportster by hand. Anyway, all the bikes got electric starters now anyway, and it's a whole different world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. So this really was a very productive day, despite the fact that the wind blew a lot of junk in my pond and almost blew the RD over. And when I tried to hand start the bike, it took, I forgot to put the choke on. Anyway, we'll do that in the future. That's always a fun trick. Anyway, done with the RD here. I have some funny stuff from the A-Team. And this was a ride, just a couple of pictures of Glenn and I. We had gone up to Nairobi Airport, where they have a Constellation, a 4-engine, basically 50s, 60s plane. And it's a restaurant. It's gutted out and used as a restaurant. But of course, because the Nairobi Airport is very motorcycle friendly, they had, and it was restored, and I don't know if it's reopened yet. Tony was the owner, and he was very, very happy to let us walk around and walk out on the wings of the plane, and they have a patio built out there, and among other things. And the neatest thing is, and here's Glenn, of course. I'm not sure Glenn was totally interested in this type of information, but we did get the tour that we call it the Bomber. I've taken Lauren there too, and a lot of people, Mark Morgan and Turbo Steve, have gone there. We had a great time. Anyway, you can walk the walk inside the fuselage. Here we are. And you can read all about how they got this plane into a 1,700-foot runway. And it's quite a story. But again, the neatest thing here now, because I have an interest in aviation, as does many of my friends, like Dallas, for instance. Dallas, I hope you enjoy this. This is truly an interesting place. It's about an hour from my house, so it makes a good ride. And you can sit out on this little patio out in front of the wing, and you can watch the planes and helicopters. And also, this day we were out there, they had an AT-6 doing touch and goes. I guess the guy was trying to build some time. But anyway, it seemed like the people were super, super friendly and very motorcycle friendly. They actually don't mind if you park right up near the Bomber, the Constellation. And anyway, well, this was a great day. And this is the thing I miss about the A-Team. We would just get together. It seemed like 3 times a week during the week, weekends. And look at the old GS, the West Cooley Evil Twin GS in the back. Anyway, and we haven't seen Glenn in quite a while. And just in case he ever does get to see this video, Glenn, we really do miss you. We all miss you. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video.